The way things are, you would not believe there existed a time when an SUV was not the obvious choice. But that was the case 20 years ago. Or to be precise, 19 years and 6 months ago, because that's when the Q7 rocked up and changed everything. Huge shout out to the Ballard Pier for use of their fabulous space in the Mumbai Port Trust. Where else in South Mumbai are you going to get such a big playground to drive the cars than the Mumbai International Cruise Terminal? Also, before we go ahead, don't forget to hit that bell icon and stay notified for all of our video drops and stay subscribed to the Evo India channel. To be clear, SUVs were not a new breed. Bollywood, politicians, industrialists had already started to migrate to that side of the fence. But those were still the days where body-on-frame SUVs were still around, and that meant they were forever unsettled and bouncy. If you wanted true luxury, you bought a sedan. So what changed? Before we get to that, a quick dash through the history books. This is the Pikes Peak Quattro concept shown at the Detroit Motor Show in 2003. 2 years later, we got the Q7, and as you can see, not much changed. Audi engineers took the same VW Group platform as the Cayenne and the Touareg, but they enlarged it massively. It was nearly 5 meters long and 1.8 meters in height. That's a lot of real estate, and Audi engineers used all that space to put in a third row of seats. And voila, we had our first 7-seater luxury SUV. Now, of course, this third row is better suited to young kids than adults, but it had third row of seats. It also had imposing presence. It had powerful engines, Quattro grip, and it had interior quality and fittings, the likes of which we had never seen before. The India launch happened the next year, 2006, launched with V6 FSI and TDI engines and prices starting from 61 lakh rupees. Now, those were early days for Audi in India. They had just 3 models on sale, the A4, the A6 and the A8. Their ambitions were also modest. With the Q7's launch, they expected their sales to go up to 300 units in 2006 and double that to 600 in 2007. And as for local assembly, Andre Kronsbrook, the director of Audi's overseas region who launched the car in India, said they would do that when the time is right. That time came super quick because those optimal sales volumes were hit very quickly. And that's because Bollywood embraced the Q7 wholeheartedly. This is Salman Khan with his Q7. And the list of Bollywood A-listers driving a Q7 is almost as big as the Q7 itself. Deepika Padukone, Sanjay Dutt, John Abraham, Varun Dhawan, Kriti Sanon, Katrina Kaif, Kareena Kapoor, Yami Gautam, Vipasha Basu, Aditi Rao Yadri, Shania Kapoor, Arshad Varsi, Imran Hashmi, Kajol, Asin. Now you will ask, what does Bollywood know about cars? And you're probably right. Except in October of 2010, I did a comparison test of the Q7 with the GL, the X5 and the LC200, and the Q7 won. Now I have an excerpt here from that comparison test where I said, I've never been a big fan of Bollywood and I still believe that prevailing fashions rather than sense dictate what they step out of. But in the case of the Q7, they've chosen well. They've chosen the best. This is the Gen 1 facelift that came in 2009, just 3 years later. And this introduced us to something that we take for granted on all our cars: LED daytime running lamps. Audi were always at the forefront of lighting technology. And the Q7, well, nothing conveyed power, status and money as this big Audi. The interiors, the dash design, you got to remember, this is a 20-year-old car. And for that time, considering this time frame, this is actually pretty remarkable. In fact, when the Q7 came along, we called the quality even better than a Range Rover, which at that time I think cost twice the amount. This really looks good and also feels very good. You got the same single frame grille on the outside, you have it on the steering wheel. You got nice dials, you got this nice materials and lovely tactile feel to all the buttons. This MMI interface, at that time, this really set the benchmark in terms of ease of operation. The screen, well, today it looks old, and of course on this one it is faded, but for that time it was really good. The glove box release, the button was over here. You had your parking sensor button over here. You have a CD player. You also have slots for the SD cards. Your climate control operates with a nice click clack. And of course, you got a key. You insert a key to start this. This actually, for its time, and honestly even today, it's pretty nice. And I love the fact that you got all these buttons that you can play around with. Today's cars, you got that one big screen that you touch and smudge. But here, lovely tactile feel to all the buttons. It really does feel pretty good. Also, in those days, the whole panoramic sunroof concept wasn't really in. But this got a massive glass roof. So it got a 3-piece roof, including for the third row. The only problem though was it got this thin curtain, and that didn't really protect your head when you were driving in the mid-afternoon sun, because we did a lot of road trips in the Q7. This was the only real drawback, the only criticism that we had. I had forgotten, the Q7, it originally came with Bose sound system. The Q7 was based on a modified version of the Volkswagen Group platform, and for its time, it used a very high proportion of lightweight steels, a lot of aluminum also, and that gave it very good torsional rigidity. In fact, back then, SUVs weren't really known for handling as such. They were roly-poly, they were big and floaty, but the Q7, many testers actually described it as handling sort of like a hatchback, a very, very big and tall hatchback, but a hatchback nevertheless. In fact, to drive, this was extremely good. The first time I actually drove this was in Dubai, and it really did set a new benchmark in what you could expect from an SUV. It could also go off the road thanks to its standard air suspension. It could vary the ride height from 165mm to up to 240mm. So over bad patches, over boulders, rocks, you could actually lift the suspension and go over it all. And it got Quattro all-wheel drive, which gives you traction on the road. It gives you traction off the road as well. The Q7 also did not skimp on engines. It got big engines, a V8 petrol, a V6 TDI, and that really gave it the motive power. This could hustle along, and this could really reel in the miles like nothing else that we had discovered or experienced up until then. The Quattro system used a torsion differential that split the torque 60% to the rear, 40% to the front, and that torsion differential was similar to the one used on the RS4 sports car. So that gave it better dynamics. Up until then, SUVs, they always had a fixed 50-50 split front and rear. This, with 60% to the rear, gave it a little bit more of that agility that we wanted. About the handling, I said it was rather good. Quite remarkable, in fact, considering you're piloting the equivalent of a 3-story house at 200 kilometers per hour round a corner. When it was launched in India, the Q7 came with 2 engines, a 4.2-litre V8 FSI and a 3-litre V6 TDI. The latter, it did 0 to 100 in 9.6 seconds, which made it nearly as quick as the contemporary Octavia RS and Honda Accord. That in a big SUV. Then came the 4.2-litre V8 TDI that made 340 horsepower, 760 Newton meters of torque, 0 to 100 in 6.5 seconds for a TDI. Back then, in my road test of the car, I obviously went gaga and I said, you are a mute spectator to a biblical struggle between the colossal engine and aerodynamics. This massive brick-like SUV, rear squatting, nose aiming for the horizon, thundering and hammering whatever resistance the air has to offer. But that wasn't all. Audi went one step further, using all their Le Mans winning heritage, shoehorning a V12 TDI. Insane! It made 499 bhp of power, 1000 Newton meters of torque. This was 15 years ago. It was the most powerful diesel in the world and did 0 to 100 in 5.5 seconds. Audi was seriously contemplating bringing that V12 Q7 to India. The only hitch being nothing to do with the diesel, the V12 diesel, but the carbon ceramic brakes, which was standard. Now, this was 15 years ago, and India, we didn't have any experience with homologating carbon ceramic brakes, and that's why they didn't bring that V12 to India. Also, Audi were busy because they had something big up their sleeve. And that was the Gen 2 Q7. Now, this came in after the Gen 1 found 500,000 customers over its 10-year lifespan. The Gen 2 Q7, this was all new, and it was the first recipient of the Volkswagen Group MLB platform that was going to later on underpin the Touareg, the Cayenne, the Urus, as well as the Bentayga. And that showed how important the Q7 had become in the entire Volkswagen Group scheme of things. This was considerably lighter than the Gen 1 Q7 to the obvious aid of dynamics. This was also 370mm shorter, 15mm narrower, but thanks to clever packaging, there was more space on the inside. And it continued. In fact, it got an even bigger single frame grille, even more imposing, that obviously appealed to Bollywood, who adopted this en masse. But then the Q7 also found another demographic that India considers as religion, and that was cricket. This is Virat Kohli, King Kohli himself, taking delivery of the Q7. Bollywood and cricket now conquered, we had to throw it into a comparison test, except we didn't really need to. In my first drive in January of 2016, I said, this is the best SUV that you can buy. There is no need, none at all, for a comparison test because the Q7 will walk it. If that isn't high praise, I do not know what is. The body in white was 325 kilos lighter, and of that I said, you immediately feel the lightness in the way the big SUV drives. It feels light on its feet, and that is the best compliment you can pay to an SUV. Thanks to aluminum, 67 kilos was reduced from just the weight of the suspension components. More aluminum in the body reduced the weight, obviously, but also led to better torsional rigidity. And of that, in that first drive, I said, this delivers outstanding body control. For something that can seat 7, its handling will raise both your eyebrows, and that's at no expense to comfort. Air suspension was standard. Quattro was still 60-40 biased towards the rear, but now up to 85% of the torque could go to the rear axle, and that gave it better dynamism. To verify all our claims and expectations, we had to do a comparison test, and we did that in August of 2016. The Q7 going up against the X5, GLS and XC90. And the Q7 won that test. Cabin quality took another leap up. That sliding screen, today it might look archaic, or it's actually a cool touch in this era when everything is those big screens. That screen sliding up from the dash, I think it looks cool. Anyway, about the interiors, this is what I said in my first drive verdict. This is the new benchmark, and by a mile at that. You shut the door, and just the tone of that door closing thud screams €1,000,000. It has the best sound insulation, isolating you from outside like nothing else. The quality in the cabin, the plastics, metal finishes, wood veneers, stalks, haptic feedback of the knobs and dials, even the click-clack of the indicators is astonishing. To quote from my verdict, the Q7 obviously, really is stunning. It rides as well as the GLS, and yet it handles nearly as well as the X5. The engine and suspension refinement is astonishing. The interiors, especially the quality with which it is put together, is even more jaw-dropping. It can rise on its toes and go very far off-road. And for sure, it is big enough. That prompted us to undertake what was Evo India's biggest road trip up until then. Let's pause here for a history lesson. Back in 1935, a team of Germans led by Paul Haltermeyer undertook a massive road trip, 17,000 kilometers across India and Sri Lanka in 3 DKWs. Auto Union, of which DKW was a part of, had set up their first dealership in then Bombay, and the India representative needed to market the quality and reliability of German-built cars. A pan-India road trip was hit upon, and upon successful completion, sales of Auto Union went up 3-fold. which means Audi isn't 2 decades old but 9 decades old in India. Our Quattro expedition followed in the tyre tracks of those 3 DKWs, first from Mumbai to Delhi, then Delhi to Kolkata via Gangtok, and finally Chennai to Bengaluru, Mysore, Thalassery, Ooty, Madurai, and ending at Coimbatore, where we also found an original DKW at the GD Museum. The Q7 I drove on the last leg of the Quattro expedition, and this was my summation. This is, without a doubt, the finest car or SUV I've had the pleasure of road tripping in anywhere in the world. On highways, the ride is fantastic. The noise level deathly silent. The comfort outrageous. It wafts you along, and that's the first time I've used that word when not describing a Rolls. The interior quality and fittings are outstanding. The stereo exceptional. In fact, everything about the Q7, except maybe for the way it looks, I wasn't a fan of it at the start, is phenomenal. I know I'm gushing, but after living with the Q7 for a week, I have to admit that it is really something else. Exceptional, in fact. The Q7 was not just bought for the fat cat sitting at the back. Enthusiasts also bought Q7s, and this is a perfect example. Now this V6 TDI is running a stage 3 tune. It puts out around 410 horsepower, 860 Newton meters of torque. That makes it one of the fastest V6 TDI SUVs in the country today. And a perfect example of what enthusiasts can do with the Q7. Also how strong the engine and transmission is to be able to take such a tune. Now, like I mentioned, the weight went down significantly, 325 kilos, and that made a significant difference in the way this handled. This felt lighter on its feet, more agile and more responsive, whereas the earlier Q7 felt like a proper beast. This had more agility, this had better direction change, more enthusiastic change of direction, less in terms of body roll. Overall, far more enthusiastic, far more eager, and more direct. The lightness, it also made the Q7 easier to drive. So in the city, for commuting in traffic, this was effortless. This was the car to buy back in the day. That was 2016. The years post that weren't easy. Then came COVID. Finally, in 2022 came the update on the Gen 2. Let's call it Gen 2.1. Now, this was a very important car for Audi. Cars like the R8 are great halo cars, but it was the Q7 that made it the default choice in Bollywood, cricket, and by extension, in every segment that mattered. This, when it came, also coincided with a revival of Audi India's fortunes. The very month that this was launched, Audi India reported a 101% jump in their sales numbers. This was a midlife update on the second generation Q7. It retained the same Volkswagen Group MLB architecture, same 2994mm wheelbase, nearly 3 meters long the wheelbase, and that meant plenty of space on the inside. It also had added visual drama. There was no mistaking this for anything but a Q7. The interiors were thoroughly updated, and it got this 3-screen layout. So you got a 12.3-inch virtual cockpit, 10.1-inch infotainment, and an additional third screen, 8.6 inches, and that replaced the physical aircon controls. What didn't change was Audi's focus on quality. Even the volume knob, it has this deliciously tactile feel. Big change was under the hood. It now got a fully blown 3-liter V6 twin-turbo engine. 335 bhp. It did 0 to 100 in 5.9 seconds. It's also got the addition of a 48-volt mild hybrid system, and with that integrated starter generator, it obviously gives better fuel economy. It cuts in while coasting, and also it recuperates energy while braking. The bigger change was under the hood. Now, the Q7 got a full-fat 3-liter V6 turbo petrol engine that delivered 335 bhp and sent this to 100 kmph in 5.9 seconds. Top speed 250 kilometers per hour. This also got 48-volt mild hybrid technology, and what that does is that this shuts off when coasting to save fuel. It also recuperates energy up to 8 kilowatts under braking. Ride quality continued to set the benchmark, even though this now moved to 19-inch rims on run-flat tires. In fact, in the first drive, I even said that this still sets the ride quality benchmark in the 7-seater luxury SUV class, and it delivers the best ride quality this side of a Rolls or Bentley. Handling also saw a big improvement. Obviously, the engine was lighter. That aided dynamics. The Q7 also improved dynamically. The Quattro got the addition of wheel selective torque control. Now, what that does is during hard cornering, that mimics the effects of a LSD. Electronically, obviously, it brakes the inside wheel, sending more torque to the outside wheel. So what happens is when you're going around a corner hard and fast, you can carry more cornering speeds, and of course, you get more agility and dynamism. The other thing the Q7 was known for was silence, was refinement. And with the petrol engine, can't hear a thing. This is beautifully isolated from the world outside. And there was genuine hype around the revival of the Q7, so much so that allocations for the first quarter got exhausted in January itself, aided of course by the attractive pricing, 88 lakh rupees. Remember, this was launched at a starting price of 61 lakh rupees. 16 years later, 88 lakh rupees. This is the latest Q7 launched earlier this year, and what you get is typical Audi Q7 vibes but with added muscle. Up front, you get a new single frame grille. There's even more of a visual impact, and it is flanked by more aggressive air dams in the redesigned bumpers and more elaborately designed matrix LED lights that look, how do I put this, more Vorsprung durch Technik. Now Audi, they were always at the forefront of lighting technology. They introduced the world to LED DRLs, and with these matrix lights, they look even more jeweled, even more intricate, even more expensive. Audi's logo has gone 2D, part of a modern brand identity. At the rear, the Q7 badging now sports a dark chrome finish, and the exhaust strips and diffuser have been revamped to look cooler. Inside, it remains largely unchanged, with the same crisp digital screens, well laid out instrumentation, and top-notch quality. It also gets a 730-watt 19-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system that is really banging. The Q7 remains just as polished as before. In fact, a little better in terms of polish. The engine, 3-liter V6 turbo petrol engine, 335 bhp, 500 Newton meters of torque, 48-volt mild hybrid assist, and now 0 to 100 goes down to 5.6 seconds. Top speed remains limited to 250 kilometers per hour. And to drive, it has everything that we know and love about the Q7. Now, what is it about the Q7 that really drew us in right at the start? The imposing presence, the styling, the you cannot miss it for the world styling. That is there. Then there is the 7-seater, 3-row seating. That's there in all the generations. Big engines, power. Again, that's there in all the generations and all the iterations of the Q7. But the Q7 was also really nice to drive. As a vehicle to road trip across India in, this is frankly unbeatable. It gives you ride comfort, it gives you handling, it gives you performance, and it gives you that sense of safety and security that's so important on our roads. This is as good to drive as it is to be driven in. And that sense of quality, it tells you that you've paid good money on a very good car. The original Q7, it was the SUV for the rich and famous, and you could argue that the Q7's popularity brought so many more players into the segment that the Q7 effectively started. Even today, the Q7 is popular, including with women and younger buyers. Now, I have an excerpt from one of the dozens of stories that I've done on the Q7. Bollywood is happier to be seen running late from the back of a Q7. and that has only served to amp up India's traditional obsession with SUVs. It is remarkable how Audi has managed to pitch the SUV amongst the elite of Bollywood, so much so that the Q7, for all practical purposes, is now the default choice here. And it is that virtual lockdown over Bollywood that the other SUVs need to break if they have any hope of success. That was the conclusion of one of our comparison tests. And just think of it, so many more luxury SUVs have been launched, and were it not for the Q7's popularity, I don't think the segment would have become so huge as it has today. Audi, with the Q7, they also introduced so many technologies. DRL lights, matrix lights, the Quattro drivetrain, big powerful engines, virtual cockpit, the MMI interface. So many things have become the segment default. Even the whole celebrities and cars thing, you could credit Audi and the Q7 for kicking things off. So much so that even today when you see a Q7, you crane your neck to see who is in the back or driving the Q7. And that is the power of the brand.